Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. I, 28, female, have been married for the past 5 years and am the proud mother of a 4-year-old son. My husband runs a gardening and landscaping company. I was working as an accountant before my pregnancy, but after the birth of our son, I decided to work in my husband's company. So we're running it now as our family business. Apart from my husband and my son, my stepfather, in-laws, and maternal grandparents are my immediate family. My mom, who was the pillar of my life, passed away in an accident a few years back. Losing her devastated me, but I had such amazing people around who held me through my grieving months and brought me back to life. I only have a vague memory of my father. The last I saw him was on January 2nd, 23 years ago. I was 5 years old then. He was not home for Christmas. On the day after New Year's Eve, he came home completely wasted. There was a huge argument between my parents. I was frightened by their yelling and started crying. My mom stopped arguing when she saw me crying, but my dad kept shouting at her. She took me to my room and shut the door. We hugged each other tight and cried together. That was the first day and the last time I saw her crying. Dad left us that day and never came back. I was not old enough to understand what was happening then and learned about this when I grew up. When my parents got married, my dad was unemployed, but my mom had a well-paying job. He did odd jobs now and then. His dream was to start a business of his own. My mom was very supportive of my dad and saved money for him. Within a few years, she had saved a good sum for him. He used that money to set up a business in a different state with his college friends. The money she offered him was a gift, and she did not expect it back. His business started to grow, and with that growth, there was a change in his attitude toward both of us. He came home rarely, and whenever he was home, he would start fights over the most trivial things. I don't even remember him ever looking at me with love. She had serious doubts about him having an affair at the place where he worked. Her fears were right. Within a few months, my dad told her that he was in a relationship with one of his business partners. They were living together there. He had no regrets about the affair and admitted it proudly to my mother. The lady involved in the affair had come from my parents' marriage, so she knew that my father was a married man. The fight was over this. There was nothing much to do at this point, so my parents filed for divorce. I haven't heard from my father since then, but I didn't miss him because my mother effectively filled the void of growing up without a father. My mom met my stepfather much later when I was around 16 or 17. When I turned 15, I had the realization that my mother was sacrificing the joy in her life for me. She had suffered so much already, so I wanted her to enjoy life. We had a healthy ground for conversation in our relationship, so I told her that I would be happy to see her dating again. She hadn't thought about it till then. She had a lot of self-doubt stemming from how her marriage had ended, but I played her wing woman, and within a year, she met my stepfather. They dated for a year and then got married. I had stayed with them for more than a year before moving out for college. They made a very goofy couple. Also, moving out would have been difficult for me if my mom was still alone. Now that she had company, I could move forward with my studies. All our joy ended a few years later when my mom got into an accident. I was 22 and dating my husband then. She fought for her life in the hospital for 2 days, but her injuries were fatal and her internal organs were failing. There was nothing much the doctors could do. When it was confirmed that she wouldn't survive long, I was debating in my head whether to inform my father about it. During a conversation I had with my mom, she told me that in the case of her death, it would be courteous to inform her ex-husband about it. She had forgiven him, and I knew this, but I still held some hostility towards him. What made me furious was how during all these years, he never inquired about us. But since this was something that she wanted, I decided to contact him. I only had my father's old email ID with me since I was dysfunctional. I asked my husband to draft an email for my father. We sent him an email detailing my mother's condition. A week after her funeral, I got his. It was less than an email and more of an angry rant. The rant began with how my mail had made him lose his mental peace, and it ended with a request not to bother him or his family again. I didn't expect anything more from a man who left his wife and 5-year-old daughter to live with his mistress. I was just disappointed in myself for sending him the email. If I had been a bit more emotionally balanced, I would have acted against it. Anyways, all contact with him ended after this. But a week back, I got an email from his ID. It was lengthy. My mom used to call me Kitty while I was young, and he used that to address me in the email. His tone was apologetic and fatherly. The most surprising aspect of the mail was that at no place did he justify his actions. He blamed himself for leaving me and my mother. He updates us about his condition at home. He had 2 kids with his wife. They were happily married. He had retired from the business, and now his kids and wife were handling it. Towards the last part of the mail, he revealed that his test reports were out and the doctors have diagnosed him with lung cancer. I remember Mom telling me he was a heavy smoker. He attached a copy of the test report in the mail. His disease was not in its final stage, or at least that's what his doctor was saying, but the diagnosis made him reflect on his life. He ended the email with his desire to undo what he did to us if we gave him a chance. I spent a whole day contemplating a fitting reply to his mail. I didn't want to sound rude to a man who was suffering. At the same time, I didn't want his presence in my life. When I couldn't reach a decision, I discussed this with my husband and he shared my opinion. But my stepfather asked us to go meet him if it was possible. My mother's parents advised me to reply with an email asking what he expected us to do. I decided to take their advice and sent him a reply email. I tried to maintain a formal tone. I told him that my mom had already forgiven him, and now that I'm in a very good position in life, I forgave him as well. I added my phone number towards the end. He called me a few minutes after I sent the mail. He sounded old and weak. He continued apologizing throughout the call as well. It was unbearable after a point. He then asked me if it would be okay for him to come and stay at my house for a few months. He wanted to make it up for the affection I was deprived of in my childhood. I didn't know how to respond to that. After reading his mail, I thought he planned to meet me once, but here he was asking me for permission to stay at my place for months. I told him that we may not be comfortable having him around for months, but showed interest in visiting him. He cut the phone abruptly. I didn't call him back, but I discussed it with my family. My stepfather and grandparents think that I was too harsh towards my father, but my husband feels it would be okay for him to stay with us for a week. Their opinions are based on the fact that my father is terminally ill, but I don't think I have gotten over him abandoning me. Am I the a-hole for denying my ill father an opportunity to reconnect with me when he contacted me out of nowhere after 23 years? Get off the phone with my father again. He's begging me now to take him to our house. I don't know why he's being desperate like this. I'm thinking about reconsidering my decision, but I have a very bad gut feeling about having him around. Only a day has passed and he has already sent long texts to people in my family through Facebook. These texts are essays in which he's begging us to give him a chance. I'm honestly feeling sad about this now. I have decided to go visit him first and console him. We've decided to take him in. How the tables turn. When we shared our plan to visit him at his place, he was very defensive. We assumed it could be because of the awkwardness of us meeting his wife and children, but he told us that's not the reason. So we concluded that he didn't want to put us through the trouble of driving all the way there. He was using his email ID to contact me. The signature block at the end of his email had his residential address, so my husband and I drove there this weekend to surprise him. We planned to call him upon reaching the house. As soon as we got down from the car, I dialed his number, and my husband walked forward to the house. He saw a young woman outside the house. By the time my father attended the call, my husband had struck up a conversation with this lady. My father shouted at me for visiting his house before informing him. At the same time, my husband waved at me to walk towards the house. The house indeed belonged to the woman who my father married and their children. But she was his ex-wife now. 3 years back, she discovered that he was cheating on her with a female worker at their company. His affair partner, AP, was one of the oldest workers in the company. AP was married as well. When questioned, AP revealed that this affair started long back and was happening throughout the time my father was married to my stepmother. So she kicked him out and fired her. He was living with the AP for the past couple of years, but AP got back with her husband recently and my father was stranded. He contacted the families of both his ex-wives with a fake test report, but unlike us, they didn't respond to him. She apologized for whatever happened during my childhood before we left. The first thing I did was block my father everywhere. I made my family members do that as well. I got betrayed by him again. I'm the one to blame. I knew his character well and still fell for his mind games. Not again. NTA, if you're inviting him to your house, you're inviting in a whole package of childhood trauma as well. You have a good bunch of people around you, so you haven't really gone through anything distressing, but your father's presence could reopen severely unopened wounds from your childhood, so better stay away from him. NTA, either he wants your kidney or he wants you in his pyramid scheme. Why else would he contact you out of the blue after responding like that when you informed him about your mother's death? He's a snake, OP. Don't trust him. I'm female 30. My husband, Tom, male 35, recently had his birthday and he invited some of his friends for dinner, some drinks, and then we were meant to go to a pub. Invited were people who I knew and was friends with, as well as some people he was friends with that I didn't know or barely knew. One of them was Harry, Tom's new workmate. I've met Harry a few times and he seemed okay, nice enough. He brought his wife with him, Claire, female, late 20s, I guess. It was my first time meeting her, and I'll admit, she rubbed me the wrong way. She was just so judgy about everything. But I didn't have much time to talk to her, as I completely forgot to buy mixers for drinks and had to run to the shops. I was gone for maybe 10 or 20 minutes, but when I came back, the music was turned off and everyone was in the living room. Claire said, "Perfect, we were waiting for you. We can start now." I was confused, but when I got closer, everything was clear. She decided to throw an MLM party during another party. She had a table set up with her products and flyers and all that crap. I was annoyed, but I let her do her thing, hoping that she'll be done and we can carry on with the party. Alas, when she was done, she told everyone that she set up a table in my kitchen and we can go and buy products and sign up to be a rep or whatever it's called. I've had enough at this point. I should mention that MLMs are not yet huge in my country, at least not the most predatory ones, but they're growing. Still, many people are completely clueless about them, and since I spend way too much time online, I'm quite aware of them. I told her to stop it, and there won't be any MLM selling in my house. Everyone was confused. She started defending her company, saying that it's not an MLM because they're illegal, blah, blah. Then tried to guilt trip me, saying that I don't support small businesses. I quite literally run a legitimate small business. I quickly had enough and told her to get the frick out. She started packing, really angry, making sure to call me some names, including asshole. Her husband helped her pack and they left. My husband was really angry that I embarrassed him and Harry and should have just let it go and support her. I tried to explain to him that I couldn't because she'll get other people sucked into her scheme. My husband's friends were divided even after I explained what MLMs are. Today, Claire has been messaging me all day, sending me screenshots of some weird Facebook group comments supporting her and calling me a jerk, etc. My husband is still annoyed with me. I thought I was right, but with everyone ganging up on me, I'm not sure. AITA? NTA, this was meant to be for your husband's birthday. She'd clearly decided to do this beforehand and had no respect for the occasion. She then tried to dictate to you what would happen in your own home. I don't understand why your husband is supporting her. NTA. You are way nicer than I would have been. As soon as I saw Claire's setup, I would have put an immediate stop to it, said that this was a social event, not an MLM party, and to put her wares away. Then I'd have turned the music back on and asked who wanted a drink. Claire tried to take advantage of you having a bunch of people over and not being there to say no when she decided to set up. That makes Claire the AH. Please go out on your local social media and let people know how she tried to hijack your social evening in your home without your knowledge or permission. That is key. I, 28 female, recently got my baby son. After years of trying, I finally was able to have a child on my own. I struggled to get pregnant for several years, but luckily, I had my husband Michael by my side to support. I was lucky, though, in a sense of Michael works in an extremely well-paid job, so we could afford expensive stuff for an unborn baby. But for some reason, that annoyed my stepsister Joy, 30 female, a lot. She has 4 kids on her own and had a miscarriage, which I wasn't aware of until I set my baby room up. I tried to be very cautious about this topic with her since I knew how painful it can be at times. Michael and I accommodated her a lot during those times. I let her stay in our house when her husband kicked her out, since he has alcohol issues. I tried to buy her things to cheer her up. Michael even offered her husband a job, but they denied because it don't pay enough, etc. The first time Joy made me uncomfortable was when she arrived at my house once with her toddler and saw my unborn baby's nursery at that time. She then revealed that she had a miscarriage and that it was insensitive of me to do those things while she was going through grief. I apologized and tried to change the subject. Then she asked me to not post anything about my son on social media and asked me to not have a baby shower because we can be that cruel to do such a thing when her family is going through grief. I told her that she has nothing to worry about since my husband and I were not planning to do a baby shower to begin with. Second time, when the disaster happened, is when I took Joy and her 4 kids in because she had an argument with her husband. Result: her kids destroyed my baby's room, ruined walls, end up breaking the crib and baby swing, and end up painting most of my baby clothes. My stepsister only said, "They are just kids being kids." Fast forward to when my baby was born. Michael brought me a Mercedes as a thank you for giving birth to his son. Of course, I was happy about it and shared the news of my son being born to my Insta. Oh man, I didn't know what was coming. Joy bombed me with a message saying that I'm rubbing in her face that I gave birth to a baby while she couldn't, and how now I'm rubbing in her face that me and Michael living in luxury while she and her family is struggling. She said if I had $100,000 to spare for a car, I should have instead spent it on buying them a new place to stay since they were fed up with renting places. She also mentioned that she wouldn't have miscarriages if I helped her more financially instead of buying my unborn child unnecessary shit. For some reason, whether it was my hormones or something, but I end up telling her that her kid is not my responsibility and that her miscarriage was a sad thing, but she has no right to make me feel like it was my fault. So, AITA for saying that her miscarriage is not my responsibility and being insensitive about it? NTA, but she sure is very toxic. Her letting her children destroy your baby room would have been a final straw for me. She's miserable, and she's trying to make her misery your issue. There is nothing wrong with you sharing and being happy for your baby, and she doesn't have the right to dictate what you do. Seems like she's jealous of your life when she should be focusing on her own. NTA, block this woman from your phone and from your life. Do not let her in your home, no matter what. If you feel bad for that, just realize you now have a child to protect, and your stepsister and her children cannot be trusted in your home or around your child. Do not engage in any discussion about this issue going forward. She is not well. or she is simply miserable, probably both. And there is no way you can explain basic logic to a person acting like she is. Block her on social and consider blocking her on your phone too. Ignore any argument she tries to start with you and focus on your wonderful family. And absolutely make sure she doesn't have access to your home.